Welcome back, y'all. Happy Thursday. This is the Bluechip Breakdown, and I'm your host, Bull. Today, we'll be talking about the college football playoffs because a lot of us are confused on what the voting criteria actually is. We've heard the chairman of the voting committee talking about strength of schedule, strength of record, game control, all that type of stuff in very vague terms. But the main thing that he's talked about is, hey, we watch these games. So we're just going to judge these teams based off of what they've done over the course of this season. They're keeping things vague intentionally because they're not the ones that's actually voting on this stuff. There's somebody that's way higher up that's pulling all the strings. We'll get to that here in just a minute. But I'll tell you right here, right now, it's all about the money. It's all about the teams that will generate the most revenue for the network that is controlling the college football playoffs, and that is ESPN. Now, ESPN has actually subcontracted some of the games out to TNT, but make no mistake about it, ESPN controls all this stuff. And what else do we know about ESPN? Is that they are also in a TV contract directly with the SEC. So we're going to break down what actually matters from a viewer perspective, from a money perspective, because all these conferences are making the bulk of their money off of, basically their views, right? Is off of the TV contracts, and the contracts are negotiated based off of the views that each conference gets. So we will look at the teams that are in the playoff hunt, and we'll talk about who's been getting the most views over the course of the season. I am willing to bet right now, okay, on November the 21st, that we will be able to very confidently predict the teams that will be in the college football playoffs, or at least some of them, based off of the views that each team is getting. So with all that being said, please do us a very big favor. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. It'll help us out tremendously. Also, I want to send a huge shout out, because we have not done this in a while, to all the members of this channel. Y'all are really keeping us going. And if you want to be a part of all the film sessions that we bring to the members, you can do so by clicking on the join button just below this video. And big shout out to everyone that's donating to this channel by scanning the Cash App QR code wherever that is on the screen. You can donate as little as $1. That helps us out tremendously. Please also continue to share our videos and all that type of stuff, because we need to continue to grow. We put a whole lot of work, effort, and time into all these videos, bringing y'all a lot of information. This one right here took me several days to bring together all this information. So just to let y'all know, it helps us out tremendously, and we greatly, greatly appreciate it. But let's go ahead and jump into it. All right, y'all, the first thing that I want to show you is going to be the two games that got the most views over the course of this college football season. And it's going to be starting off with Georgia versus Texas. They averaged 12.9 million viewers, but Tennessee versus Alabama averaged 10.7 million viewers. Now, if you look down here, what you're going to see is that Georgia versus Texas actually got to a peak of 14.1 million viewers, and Alabama versus Tennessee got up to a peak of 14.7 million viewers. That right there could make a difference. I don't know exactly what they're going to be looking at, but it's probably going to be based off of the average viewers. So these four teams are all SEC teams. And honestly speaking, we could almost just stop this video right here, because I think that at the end of the day, if the SEC only gets in four teams, it would be these four teams, because we see how many views they got. It's a lot more compared to any other matchups throughout the course of this season. Now let's take a look at the SEC teams that are in playoff contention and their views per game, their views over the course of this season. Up at the top, we have UGA at 68 million. They're averaging 6.8 million views per game. This was very easy math for me, y'all, because all these teams have played 10 games over the course of this season. So we know that UGA is going to get in, right? I mean, UGA and Alabama, who's averaging 4.8 million views per game with 48 million views over the course of the season. Those two teams being the tops in the SEC, we know that they're going to get into the college football playoffs. There's no question. And even if you go back to the game last weekend, Tennessee versus UGA, who got all the calls? It was Georgia. Okay. And even with all the calls, Tennessee still had a chance to win that ball game. I think that things will even up a lot more once we get to the actual playoff situation. So I cannot wait to see Georgia. Hopefully we can see them, fingers crossed, in the playoffs. But pointing all this stuff out just to let you know how the fixes are in. Okay. Now let's come on down to number 3. We have Texas. Okay. 41.2 million views over the course of this season, 4.1 million views per game. Again, all these numbers are based off of Nielsen, and Nielsen is just looking at the major cable network channels. So we're not talking about ESPN News or SEC Network or ESPNU or any of the streams. Okay, it's none of that type of stuff. But I do believe that this is a good gauge for who's at the top, what the order actually is, because the views are pretty consistent, or actually there's a very strong correlation with the fan base size and the teams that are ranked the highest, just as far as views go. And, Georgia and Alabama, that would probably be the exception. I think that Alabama actually has more fans than Georgia does. But we know that there is like that, front running bias. That's why I call Georgia the front running cowards. Some people call them, fair weather fans, whatever. But it's that. And then also teams or, people want to see the teams that are at the top lose. So let me throw that in there as well. But then at number 4, we have Tennessee. So Tennessee, 36.2 million views over the course of the season, averaging 3.6 million views per game. If things play out, just like this, then Tennessee will be one of the 4 teams that makes it to the college football playoffs. So as Tennessee fans, you have to absolutely love this. But we have to talk about A&M because they have a very big fan base. It's it's about on par with Tennessee's fan base. It's very, very close. But A&M, they're averaging 2.8 million views per game. But then down at the bottom, we have Ole Miss only averaging 2 million views per game because they don't have nearly as strong of a fan base as these other 5 teams. Now, the thing about it for Tennessee is that we all know Texas and A&M will be playing at the end of this season. Will the fix be in before that game to make sure that Texas can get in and A&M loses? Hopefully so, because if A&M wins that game, I think that Texas will still make it to the college football playoffs, and that would push Tennessee out. So at this point, I feel very confident in saying that we need to cheer for Texas to pretty much win out at this point just to make sure that A&M cannot make it, okay? So now let me move on over here. Okay, so let me show you some of the other playoff contending teams, right? So we've got Big Ten, and we've also got Notre Dame, and then we've got a group of 5. So Ohio State, they're averaging 4.3 million views per game. Let's come on back. I'm going to show you exactly where that measures up at. That will be right above Texas. So Ohio State's getting in. We talked about that for months now. We knew that they were going to get in regardless of what happened. They would have made it in, I think, with 3 losses. They were going to find a way to put them in because they get a whole lot of views. Now let's talk about Oregon. 2.6 million views per game. Let's come back to the SEC, right? Because this is going to be very important, right? So what we see is they would be only above Ole Miss. Again, this is why I think that Ole Miss is going to be in trouble coming up versus Florida because they don't have very many views per game compared to all these big boys. So if there's going to be a team that's getting all the calls in that Florida Ole Miss game, it's going to be Florida, especially in the Swamp. Does that guarantee that they'll win? No, but it does guarantee that all the calls will be going in their favor, at least as far as I'm concerned. Then we have Penn State averaging 2.4 million views per game. Now, I did skip over Notre Dame. The reason for that is very, very simple, is that we've got 3 teams from the Big Ten that will make it to the college football playoffs. We know that without question. Now let's talk about Notre Dame because they're only averaging 2.4. And we just looked at what 2.4 gets you. That's just right above Ole Miss. Again, Ole Miss is probably done. I think that the fix is going to be in. We'll see how all this stuff measures up after this weekend, but I think that the fix will be in versus Ole Miss. Now we have Indiana, only averaging 600,000 views per game. I talked about this for, a couple of weeks now since the CFP rankings have come out. I said, look, I think that the Big Ten gets in 4 teams. Problem with it is ESPN is controlling who gets in. So if they're controlling it, being aligned with the SEC, of course, they're going to say, number one, from a viewership perspective, from a, inside of our pockets perspective, we don't want Indiana in because we can get in a team that gets more views on an average basis. So we can make our money back off of what we're paying all these conferences and stuff. And then also they are aligned with the SEC. It makes the SEC look stronger. If the Big Ten only gets in 3 and then the SEC potentially gets in 5. So whether it's 4 or 5, I'm thinking at this point, Tennessee will be getting in to the college football playoffs. And then I just put Boise State up here just to show y'all how different they look compared to everybody else. That's a group of 5 team, only averaging 300,000 views per game. At some point, ESPN, the Big Ten and the SEC are going to come together and say, look, we don't have time to have an automatic bid. I would say at bare minimum, they're going to take away that automatic bid for the group of 5. That's going to be gone. I really think that at the end of the day, and it could come, maybe after this contract is done, just as far as the TV contracts go, that the SEC and the Big Ten just say, you know what, we're going to take our ball and go play our own daggum game. We're taking all the major networks with us because all the major networks are going to be looking at the views. So I just wanted to point that out just to kind of, show you a little bit of foresight of what is about to happen based off of these views. These folks want to make money. You cannot make money with a team that's only getting 300,000 views per game. So with all that being said, we can almost guarantee that Ole Miss is going to be done. I think that this weekend, the fix is most definitely in. I think that if Indiana loses by, I'm going to say 17 points. If they lose by 17 points, if they lose in a pretty, sizable fashion, it does not really have to be a true blowout because before this, I was thinking, man, if Indiana don't lose by about 30 points, they're going to make it. Now I'm thinking that that ESPN and the SEC override all this other stuff. And if Indiana loses by a decent margin, they're out. And the SEC could potentially get in 5 teams. So all that stuff looks really good. But let me also show you this, because this is the strength of schedule based off of the CFP rankings. And obviously everything is in order from, who's ranked first through, 25. All that's going to be in order, but we've got their strength of schedule up underneath each individual program. So you look at Indiana in the top 5 with a strength of schedule of 106 that sticks out like a sore thumb. It'd be very easy for ESPN to come down and say, hey, listen, Indiana, they lost. They haven't beat anybody. They're done. Like, they're all the way out. And that's what the CFP committee is going to speak to. They're going to say, well, you know what? We gave them a chance. We put them out there because they hadn't lost, but they also haven't beat anybody. So at this point, they're done. That, like we just talked about, will make room for one more SEC team, which I'm not crazy in favor of, but if it helps Tennessee out, like if Tennessee is that 5th team on the outside, right? Like if they want to put A&M in over Tennessee, then that would help us out. So I'm fine with it. But I think that Indiana, after this weekend, is now going to be done. So I'll kind of switch things up right there. But that's big, right? And we've also kind of talked about Ole Miss. I think that the fix is in for them. With Notre Dame, I don't know. That's kind of a coin flip, because Notre Dame does have a very strong following. People love or hate Notre Dame. That equals a whole lot of views. But they're going to be playing up against Army this weekend. That's probably going to get a decent amount of views. Whenever they played up against Navy, I want to say they got about 4, maybe 5 million views. It was something like that. I wouldn't expect for the Army game to be too much higher than that, but maybe just a little bit higher, because we're getting down to crunch time. But next weekend, Notre Dame has to play, or not yet, next weekend, they're going to be playing USC. And I think that game might be a primetime game, because it was last season. But on that same weekend, okay, on that same day, Texas will be playing A&M. We know for sure that that one will be a primetime game. So the time that they kind of slot it up at will make a difference. But like we've touched on several times, you can't really put the fix in after a game. You've got to do it before the game. So I do think that at some point, maybe, they might say, I don't know, they might just say, look, we're going to let them play things out. If they make it, then they just make it. But at least we know that pretty strongly there will not be a fix in favor of Notre Dame. So as long as the game is being played fair, that's what we, most of us are all going to be looking forward to. But those are my thoughts, man. I know that I shared a whole lot of different things with you. We gave you some different perspectives. But based off of the viewership numbers and things like that, it does feel like Tennessee is in a very, very good spot, because right now within the SEC, we are a top 4 team as far as viewership goes. So please make sure, y'all, to leave your thoughts down in the comments section. And as always, please make sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, share with your friends, family, and other volunteer fans. We'll see y'all in the next one. Thanks. Peace.